You place salt to hold wealth, to protect what you earned. But salt only absorbs. It holds. And sometimes, holding isn't enough. You need to stir. And this one object, a simple copper coin, can wake what's been asleep. There are moments when money stops moving, not because you're lazy, not because you're doing something wrong, but because something is still. You did everything. You placed the salt. You lit the candle. You whispered the affirmation. And still, the flow didn't come back. That's when you realize salt is powerful, but it was never meant to move things. Salt holds. Salt keeps. Salt waits. In Feng Shui, salt belongs to earth, stable, absorbing. But money is energy. It doesn't just want to be held. It wants to dance. What's missing is not your belief, not your effort, but a conductor, something to stir the stillness, to break the pause, to wake the chi. And that's where copper comes in, a forgotten element, a messenger of movement, the bridge between stillness and flow. Before we begin the ritual, stay until the end, because this one is precise and powerful. It's also part of a new path we're unlocking, ancient pairings of salt and sacred objects that have been forgotten for too long. And if you have questions, drop them in the comments. Let's explore this together. And if this resonates with you, hit subscribe. There's more awakening to come. You place the salt in the corner, right where the wealth chi should gather. And yet, it's been days, weeks, and nothing's moved. Because here's the thing, salt doesn't create motion. It absorbs. It protects, but it doesn't push. And wealth needs motion, not just safety. Salt belongs to earth. It doesn't chase. It doesn't call. It sits and waits. When you place salt, what you're doing is anchoring. You're creating a safe zone, a quiet presence in a noisy space. But chi is different. Chi moves. It wants to be moved. Think of a river, beautiful and powerful, but dammed at one end. Still, yes, but lifeless. Salt is like the riverbed. It shapes the flow, but it doesn't make the water move. So if all you do is place salt, you're building a container, but not inviting the dance. In ancient Feng Shui, the goal was never to hold energy still. It was to guide it, to stir it gently, like a breeze gliding over water, waking it up. You didn't fail the ritual. You just forgot to awaken what you placed. In physics, energy doesn't just move on its own. It needs a push, a force, a spark. Even a stream of electricity won't flow unless there's a conductor and a difference in charge. Same with your space. You can place a bowl of salt, but if nothing interacts with it, the energy settles. It flattens. Ever notice how your money feels stuck? Right when your room feels heavy, quiet, like the air hasn't moved in days? That's not coincidence. That's energy reaching equilibrium, which is another word for stagnation. Salt alone creates stillness, but stillness without invitation becomes stuckness. I remember placing the salt, cleaning the corner, feeling proud, like I was finally doing something right. But then a week passed, then two, and nothing. The money I was waiting for, the response, the shift, never came. I even lit incense next to it, thinking maybe it needed more. But one night, I walked by the bowl, and I realized something. It looked untouched, still, like it had been holding its breath. That's when it hit me. It wasn't broken. It was waiting for me, to do more than place, waiting to be stirred, to be spoken to be moved. Salt is powerful, but its power is stillness. It holds energy, but it doesn't guide it. And when energy stays still for too long, it stops working for you. So if your wealth feels stuck, maybe it's not what you placed. Maybe it's what you forgot to move. So the question isn't whether salt works, it's whether it has help. And that's where copper comes in. What if it wasn't the salt that was missing, but the thing you never thought to pair with it? Copper has been with us forever. In wires, in water, in tools. But in Feng Shui, it was never just a metal. It was a mover, a quiet force, meant to stir the still places. In classical Feng Shui, every element plays its role. Earth grounds, wood grows, water flows, but metal transmits. Copper, as a metal element, was never meant to stand still. It was made to carry energy, to move what's stuck, to direct what's scattered. You see it everywhere. In electric wires, in water pipes, even in sacred tools. Why? Because copper doesn't resist. It receives and sends. It doesn't absorb like salt. It doesn't contain like a bowl. It leads. It flows. When copper touches salt, you don't just have a protector anymore. You now have a conductor. A loop begins. Salt gathers energy. Copper moves it. Like breath and voice, salt is the inhale. It takes in what's around. But copper is the exhale. It lets energy speak. That's why a single copper coin can awaken a bowl of still salt. Because salt holds the potential, but copper gives it direction. It's not magic. It's memory. You're activating a forgotten circuit, one that ancient rituals always knew. That qi only flows when something stirs it forward. Let's bring this into the real world. Copper isn't chosen because it's beautiful. It's chosen because it works. Out of all common metals, copper is the second best conductor of electricity on Earth. That's why it's in your walls, in your chargers, in the lines that light your entire home. Not gold, not silver, copper, because it allows energy to move with almost no resistance. And when copper meets salt, you're combining a metal that moves with a mineral that holds. Salt, chemically, is an electrolyte. It allows current to pass through. That's why salt water conducts electricity. But it needs a carrier, something to start the motion. Imagine a battery. One side stores the charge. The other side sends it out. Without that circuit, nothing flows. Salt is storage. Copper is current. So when you drop a copper coin into a bowl of salt, you're not placing a charm. You're creating a miniature energy system, one that collects qi from the room, then stirs it, then spreads it back, cleaner, clearer, and more awake. That's not superstition. That's how energy systems function in the body, in your home, and in your bowl of salt. Have you ever noticed how some spaces feel different after you add something small? Not after a full makeover, not after cleaning the whole house. Just a tiny shift. A coin placed, a bowl moved. Suddenly, the air feels softer, like it started to breathe again. And you begin to move too. You reply to the email you've been avoiding. You check your account without dread. The heaviness starts to lift. You didn't change the world. You changed the circuit. You added something that allowed flow, and the space responded. Sometimes, the most powerful shift doesn't look like power at all. It looks like a copper coin, finally remembering what it's here to do. 6. Summary. Copper doesn't speak, it moves. Salt gathers the stillness. Copper carries it forward. One protects. The other moves. Together, they stir what was asleep. And sometimes, the smallest thing in the bowl is the one that makes everything shift. So now that you know why copper matters, let's go one step further. Let me show you exactly how to drop the coin. You've held coins 1,000 times, spent them, dropped them, forgot them. But did you ever wonder what they hold? Coins aren't just currency. They're memory. They pass through hand after hand, transaction after transaction, soaking up moments of exchange, of worth, of decision. And when you drop a coin into salt, you're not just adding metal, you're releasing everything it remembers. A coin is not just a shape, it's a circle. And a circle is one of the oldest symbols of power we've ever known. In every ancient culture, the circle meant completion, cycle, no exit, no waste, just flow. The moon is a circle, the seasons, the rings of trees, even the cells in our bodies, all live inside patterns that return. And so, when a coin is dropped into salt, you are not just placing metal in a bowl. You are closing a circuit. You are drawing a sacred loop for energy to move through, without escape, without loss. In Feng Shui, coins aren't just objects. They're portals, round by design, balanced in weight, and passed through countless hands. Each coin carries a record of giving and receiving, holding and releasing. When you place that into salt, which absorbs, which holds, you activate memory. Not just yours, but the memory of value, the memory of worth, the memory of movement. It's like creating a whirlpool in still water. Not a splash, not chaos, but a quiet, focused spin that reawakens the whole bowl. That is why the coin matters, not because of its price, but because of its shape, its journey, its ability to bring energy home. In energy work, every object holds an imprint, not just a physical form, but a memory, a field, a subtle echo of every interaction it's ever been part of. When someone holds a coin, they don't just transfer money, they transfer emotion, a moment of decision, of trade, of need or trust. That imprint doesn't fade. It lingers, soft, silent, but very much alive. Studies in psychometry, a field of energetic sensitivity, show that objects retain vibrational information based on how they've been used or handled. Gaitham Gok Nin Vertli. And from a material perspective, used copper develops micro-layer oxidation, a natural patina that actually makes it more receptive to subtle electrostatic interactions. That means used coins literally become better antennas for conducting ambient energy. So when you choose a coin that's passed through hands, that's lived, that's been exchanged, you're not choosing randomness. You're choosing a conductor that already knows the frequency of value. A new coin is clean, but empty. A used coin is worn, but wise. I once had a friend, a quiet man from Southeast Asia. He practiced old Feng Shui, the kind passed down from his grandmother, who never went to school, but knew where the wind should turn. One day, we were talking about coins, and he said something I never forgot. "A coin is not for spending," he whispered. "Not always. Sometimes it's meant to rest, to hold a wish, to carry the memory of value into places where energy has forgotten how to move." He told me that his grandmother would never use a new coin in her rituals. She said new coins were like babies, clean but powerless. She would keep one old copper coin by her window, buried in salt, and once a year she would take it out, breathe on it, and say, "You've touched 1,000 hands. Now carry mine." Back then, I didn't fully understand, but now, after I placed my own coin into the bowl, I think I do. A coin is more than currency. It's a circle of memory, of movement, of meaning. And when it touches salt, it doesn't just sit there. It starts to stir what's been waiting, not just in your space, but in you. Now that you understand what the coin carries, it's time to place it with intention. Let's begin the ritual. You have the salt, you have the coin, but it's not just what you place, it's how you move it that awakens the flow. Many people think just tossing a coin into salt is enough, but energy doesn't answer laziness. It responds to presence. There's a way to invite the flow, not just force it. This isn't just a ritual, it's a map, a sequence designed to mirror how energy really moves. Each gesture, each step was passed down not for magic, but for motion. When you stir salt around copper, you're bringing earth and metal into dance. Salt holds earth, copper guides metal. Together, they create a circuit of qi. It's like lightning through clouds. Static gathers, but it only becomes power when something directs it. Placing the coin is anchoring intention. Stirring clockwise mirrors the sun's motion, activating expansion, forward energy. The number 3, a sacred number in Feng Shui and energy work, represents creation. Start, shift, settle, heaven, human, earth. And the whisper? That's not poetry. That's vibration. Your voice carries resonance into the material. It lets the salt know what you're asking it to do. This isn't a wish, it's a wave. You're not just telling the universe what you want. You're showing it with your hands, your breath, your rhythm. Salt absorbs, copper directs, but only you can stir it into motion. Energy doesn't always respond to force. Often, it responds to precision. In somatic therapy and subtle energy medicine, even the smallest, most intentional movements, like tracing a fingertip in a circle, can shift the nervous system from a state of freeze to flow. The clockwise motion aligns with our internal body rhythm, the direction of digestion, blood flow, even how we write. Move forward, open doors. And your whisper? It's not just sound, it's frequency. Studies in cymatics show that even a soft voice can reorganize particles in matter. Salt, being crystalline, responds to vibration with pattern. What you say shapes how it holds energy. When copper is placed in salt, it creates a mild electrostatic field, especially when stirred. Your finger becomes the activator, your body the conductor. You're not just moving salt, you're moving qi by becoming part of the circuit. This ritual works, not because it's old, but because it reflects how energy behaves in the real world. It gathers, it charges, and then it stirs. So this isn't superstition. It's structure, rooted in how energy truly behaves, from your cells to your space to the quiet waiting inside your bowl of salt. And now, you're ready to move it, not by force, but with presence, with rhythm, with intention. Let's begin. Ritual, step by step. Set whisper. Now, let's stir what's been still. Step 1. Don't use a new coin. Use one that's been touched, passed through moments, carried in pockets, pressed in palms. Why? A used coin holds energy imprint, the emotional memory of value exchanged. In Feng Shui, coins that have circulated become alive with movement. New coins are clean, but asleep. You want a coin that remembers how to flow. Step 2. Place it under sunlight for a few minutes, or hold it in your palm, and breathe on it. One breath from your chest. Why? Light resets without stripping. Breath charges with your field. This isn't cleansing to erase. It's cleansing to attune. Step 3. Don't drop it. Place it flat in the center, like a stone in still water. Why? Centering the coin in the salt bowl activates radial flow. Qi begins to move outward in concentric rings. This forms a stable energetic field, like ripples in energy space. Step 4. With your fingertip, draw a small circle around the coin 3 times, clockwise. Feel the motion. Let your breath follow. Step 5. You stir what has stalled. You carry what wealth forgot to move. Step 6. Put the bowl near a threshold, a window, a hallway, any place where the air shifts, even just slightly. Why? Salt anchors. Copper stirs. But space must breathe for energy to flow. Placing it where qi naturally moves turns your bowl from a container into a current. Step 7. You don't need to touch it every day. You don't need to look at it. Just let it be. Let it stir in stillness and watch what shifts. You're not just placing things. You're creating rhythm. Your hand, your voice, your choice. They shape how energy re-enters your life. And sometimes, one quiet circle is all it takes to start the turning again. Salt protects. The coin remembers. But it's your hand that stirs the beginning. You stirred the salt. You placed the coin. And maybe something already feels different. But what happens next isn't always loud. Sometimes, wealth returns in small movements, a message, a breath of clarity, a door that opens again. Let's step into that. Let's see what begins after the stirring. You stirred the bowl, and now you're waiting. But what if the shift doesn't come as thunder? What if it begins like a breath? Wealth doesn't always show up as money first. It often returns as movement. The message finally replied. The clarity came. The block lifted. Not in your bank, but in your body. People expect fireworks, big breaks, sudden shifts. But real energy doesn't always crash in. It returns like water soaking into dry soil. Quiet, steady, alive. When you stir the coin in salt, you're not casting a spell. you're opening a path, and energy always takes the path of least resistance. That path might look like finally writing that email you've been stuck on for weeks, or cleaning a corner that's felt heavy for months without knowing why. It could be the first night of deep sleep after too many tossing in silence, or a moment of clarity when the fog finally lifts. These aren't random events. They're signs that your field is changing. That chi which had pooled, settled, gone quiet, is beginning to circulate again, like a wind that returns to a closed room. Subtle at first, but then you feel it. The way the curtain moves, the air shifts, the light touches places it hasn't touched in days. You may not see the wealth yet, but you'll feel the return of flow. And that's how wealth always begins. Before money moves, energy moves. Before energy moves, you do. In neuroscience, the brain releases dopamine, not just when you achieve something, but when you sense momentum. That means even a small shift, writing an email, clearing a drawer, feeling lighter in a room, signals your system, we're back in flow. And when the nervous system feels motion, it reduces internal resistance. It quiets anxiety. It reopens decision pathways. That's when clarity returns. That's when your attention expands beyond survival into possibility. In energy medicine, spaces hold what we haven't processed. A blocked corner isn't just a design issue. It's where your chi pooled and stopped responding. So when you stir the bowl, when air starts moving again, you're not just fixing the room. You're releasing stuck signals from your environment back into flow. Even subtle motion, a breath, a hand stir, a whispered line, can re-engage the vagus nerve, the body's own reset switch for stress and stagnation. Your coin wasn't magic. Your movement was. When your field reactivates, so do your instincts. So does your confidence. And so does the world around you. I didn't even realize it at first. I wasn't checking my account obsessively. I wasn't stuck in loops. I answered emails without dread, and then a deal that had gone quiet wrote back. Not a jackpot, but a shift. And that's where everything began again. It didn't roar, it didn't shout, but something moved. You stirred the bowl, and without meaning to, you stirred something in you. A hesitation softened. A block eased. A current once still began to return. And maybe that was all it needed. Ner mai ngui semket noi. So maybe it didn't roar, but did it whisper? Let's close this together and see what stayed still and what's ready to move again. You placed the salt. You chose the coin. You stirred the stillness. And maybe, just maybe, you noticed something shift. Not loudly, but clearly. Like air entering a room that had waited too long for breath. Sometimes, wealth doesn't come from asking. It comes from listening, from aligning, from moving with the chi that was always there, but never invited. If something stirred in you, share it. Maybe it was a thought, a message, a lightness, or even a sense of return. Comment below. Tell me, I stirred the bowl. I felt the shift. Or ask anything you still wonder. Let's talk about it quietly, deeply. And if you want to go deeper, hit subscribe. There's more to come. Rituals that remember what the modern world forgot. Until then, keep the coin where the air moves. Let it turn in silence. And watch. what begins to return?